we're selling copies. Yeah, I'm plugging the book. It's my first opportunity to plug something that I can hold. Very exciting.
I gotta say, this is, if I may, do a commercial here. This is a really great book. First of all, the cover art is by a Norfolk artist named Mark Fussell. Works with spray paint. This is spray paint.
Wow, very cool.
And he's going to be doing the cover of the new book as well. Just confirmed that last night. He's very excited to do the next one. I'm very excited to have a consistent sort of look of theme.
And support a local artist.
And to support a local artist.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that's been really funny about this is quite accidentally. This area is extremely well represented in this book. As I said, we've got authors from 7 nations. The artist is from Norfolk. I met him at the Stockley Gardens Art Festival the first time.
Yeah.
It's like, man, that stuff's cool. Let's put it on a book. But Heather Harris McFarland is a creative writing graduate of Old Dominion University. Eric Landry is a creative writing at Old Dominion University. Who's creative writing? But anyway, they're both living in the Pacific Northwest now, but they both went to ODU. And then, of course, I went to William & Mary here locally. So Virginia's just always been a state of letters. So, but it's a great book. There are some of the stories in here. Let me just kind of go through. Stepping on Sand and God by Corey Scarry. No offense to you.
That was the story that got Corey Scarry accepted into the Clarion Writers workshop.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why, and that's one of the most prestigious workshops that exists in the field.
Corey is a very interesting guy. His legal name is actually binary code, I think. Actually, he changed it when he was a young man. Fascinating, brilliant, amazing writer. When I read this story, first of all, there were 2 typos in the whole darn thing, which as an editor made me think, this would be pretty easy. This is one of the first stories I got, and it just blew me away. Second story in here is by an author named Tim Jeffries. It's called No Other. I don't want to spoil it for you. I'm sorry.
I love that story.
Yeah, I mean, I love Corey's story, but I can certainly see somebody liking Tim's better. It was just such a. I mean, I got to the end, and it just felt like I'd been punched in the stomach in a good way. I was like, man, I did not see that coming. Reflections from Mirror World 57 by Kat Rambo. Kat is the president of the Science Fiction Writers of America. She does a lot of really just phenomenal flash fiction. 1,000 words, 1,500 words or less. This story is actually a superhero story, and it's really cool and really different. Liminal Hill by Kelly Dwyer is a story that's going to, we're going to see Lim some more, correct?
I hope so.
Lim is an interesting character. He's been through some hard times, but
it's a sad sack. It's a kind of a cyberpunk heist.
It's actually one of the few stories in there that I felt like, where's the rest of it? Like,
that's what you
not in a
exactly.
You wanted the book, yeah.
Right. I mean,
That's
you could
what-
tell that there
was the
was
first
more
thing he
to
said
it.
was,
So,
is this part
yeah.
of the book? Which, as an author, you really feel like you're succeeded in creating an engaging world when people want to read more.
I wanted to know more about Lim's life, not just his future, but his past. So yeah, it was a great story, and I think that's one of the things that gets lost a lot in traditional publishing now. It's just telling a good, interesting story about a person in spec fiction. Everything has to be about the latest tech, or can we just not have a hero? Is that too passé? When We Go Flying by Comma Post, just a trippy story. I mean, when I read it, I was like, man, that is some crazy stuff. And then I read it again and again, So it's about Tim Jeffries wrote a beautiful review of it. Actually, basically, it's a story about it imagines air passenger flight as a consequence-free zone. What happens in the air stays in the air, even death. So it imagines what people would be like on long flights if there are absolutely no consequences to their actions. And it's just beautifully done. And she writes it as a man, remarkably well. I mean, you have no idea it's a female author who created it. You have no idea.
Yeah, I did. When I was going through the list, I was like, second.
And I think that just speaks to the comics incredible craft, frankly. Let's see, Harbor by Amol Singh. Amol Singh is from, I can't remember this Writer in India. Really, just a super nice guy. It's such a fascinating story. It's almost space opera, but with a couple of different twists, a much more modern sensibility.
And it's funny because it read to me a little bit more like a modern folk tale.
Yes, that's a very good way to put it. Let's see, Pandora's Toy Box by Heather Harris McFarland. Heather is a longtime friend of mine. We've been editing each other's works for, gosh, 10, 15 years now. This story really struck me just because of her sensibility. She's married to a man from Scotland and is a big Doctor Who fan. And a lot of that sensibility, that British sort of sensibility seeps into this Southern American writer's work. And it's a great story about sacrifice, about relationship, I think. About what matters to people. The Muse of Fire by Kayla Bashy. Kayla is a phenomenal author. When I first read this story, because I am not as well schooled in gender non-specific pronouns and things, I was a little confused. I had to read it twice to understand it. And Kayla uses a lot of pronouns anyway. But we went back and we worked through it, and what we ended up with was this just really lovely story where at the end of it, the gender differences of the characters don't matter.
It's elegantly done in a way that's very progressive and focuses on the story rather than the concept of gender specificity. And it's quite lovely.
Yeah, so what you have is this amazing fantasy story where the genders are non-traditional and you don't care. You just don't notice. And it really struck me. I was really impressed. Good Fire by Eric Landreneau. I don't even know how to describe it. Eric is a science fiction story. The guy is a trip. And his writing reflects it. He's into rock and roll and hiking and riding dirt bikes, and he's lived in Southwestern Virginia. The story takes place in Southwestern Virginia. I had a little affinity for it because I was raised there. But when you read the story, again, it comes down to caring about people. That's what the story is really about, and people dealing with the hard times in their lives and how they support one another. It's really a good story. It's a very human story. Somnambulant is by me. I don't want to talk about it. That would be just a bridge too far, I think. Did you read that one, Kelly?
I did many months ago.
Okay,
It's going to put me on the spot.
That's fine.
Pump them up. And
Tim Jeffries wrote a great review of it on Goodreads, though. I was like, man, Tim's the deal.
I thought what you did in the story was quite lovely in the way that the way that you were complimenting the use of gender as not mattering, your use of time as being broad and this exceptional scope of the relationship of these two sort of, not mythical, but thematic beings relating to each other over this broad scope of time, where
About
you didn't
12,000 years.
right, where you didn't feel as though this was a story that dragged. You felt as if this was a story about emotion and relationship.
Oh.
You're welcome. I jumped ahead and read that first.
Yeah.
What did you think?
Yeah, I already told you. I loved it. It like you said, you kind of feel, you don't realize that time is passing because it's not like the story's dragging out. But when it's over, you do feel all the emotion. Like it kind of, seems like it's kind of heavy at the end. You didn't feel like it was when you were reading it,
And
and
then
then
I let a breath out.
yeah, you're just kind of like, yeah.
It's good.
I'm so flattered by that because it's meant to be heavy.
See, I feel like this complimentary and telling our stories keeps us motivated to go back and write more.
Yeah. One thing I will say about Somnambulant for me is there's an element of addiction in the story. And having spent so much time in and around the music industry, I have known a fair number of addicts and seen what addiction does to people. And it's terrible. That's all I've got to say about it, I guess. Meanwhile, on a Different Earth by Anya Penfold, as Tim said, just a lovely story about people taking agency in the face of something awful. The Banana Tree by Gail Villanueva. Gail is from the Philippines. She's a lovely person, a terrific writer.
She raises ducks.
She raises ducks.
She likes to put pictures of them.
Yeah. And this was, what I loved about this was it took a completely different sort of culture and mythology that most of us have no exposure to, and put it in a a sort of science fiction realm that's immediately recognizable science fiction fans.
But it's still incredibly engaging and original,
Yeah,
and rooted
absolutely.
in her cultural
Yeah,
sense.
and it was just so neat to see that. The Breeding Dust by Dennis Maltauer. Dennis is a German author who writes remarkably well in English. I don't know if he lived here part of the time or what, but The Breeding Dust reminded me so much of Robert E. Howard's better stories, Preter Cunning.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, reminded me so much of his better stories. It was like really old school fantasy. A wizard and, you know, deadly apparitions in the desert. It was just like, yeah, this is just cool. Yeah, you used to get wrapped right up in it. The Forest Realm by P. Bolivar is a similar sort of fantasy story, but it deals a lot with video games. It takes place in sort of a video game, I want to say reality.
It's a little bit like Ernest Cline in the way that he uses video game not addiction, but the sort of obsession and immersive quality in the way you start to have a relationship with the concept of the game when you get so invested in it.
Yeah, I mean, it really could. Without the sort of speculative fiction elements, it could almost stand on its own as a story about obsession.
Yeah.
And again, relationships, personal experiences, it's just lovely. Random Acts of Cosmic Whimsy by Getsy DeVries, as I said before, reminds me a lot of the slipstream science fiction of the 70s. You know, it's a lot of times you're like, okay, I don't know where this is going, but it's so weird and interesting, I'm going to keep reading. Now, when you get to the end, it's clear they had a plan all along. Getsy's an extremely intelligent guy. Works in the aeronautics field. It's just a really great story. So a style of writing you don't see very much anymore. And then #BFF by SK.
It's a Twitter fiction.
It's a Twitter fiction.
Which is
she
something
wrote the
she specializes in.
She wrote the entire story on Twitter.
And she's
so
published quite a few of them.
you know, the whole story is 140 characters or less with links, and it's a story.
If you stick with it,
I don't
it's
wanna-
really, no,
I
don't
don't wanna
worry.
spoil
It's
it.
really fascinating. That's
And-
something that I would have, my eyeballs would have bled a little bit on a few years ago, but now reading the concept of what she can accomplish, knowing how much she can accomplish in just that short period
I
of
think,
text.
without giving anything away, I think what strikes me about it is the way, without all the prose and description we usually think of in writing, the way she still creates these characters in your head about what they tweet. You can't help but imagine who these people are and what's going on with them based on the tweets. And so that's, I mean, to be able to write prose without writing prose, that's something. I mean, that's really a different kind of talent.
Mhm.
And she's excellent. So that's the stories in the book.
And it's for sale.
It's
And we'd
for
be
sale.
happy to sell.
And you can get it, you can sign them, you can get it on Amazon. But I mean, I'm very proud of it. You know, it's kind of weird to be so proud of other writers' work, but the fact that they chose to be a part of this and that we were able to work together and create what I think is really one of the better anthologies of last year, in my opinion. I'm allowed to have that opinion.
You're allowed to have it.
It's been a lot of fun.